Hi, I'm Nathaniel Johnston, NJohnston Photography. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Nikon D600 for focus camera. It's paired up with the Nikon 24-70 f2.8G lens. Let's take it for a spin. The response on the new Nikon D600 is very snappy. It's a nice camera to shoot with. The body's light, but it's almost too light. I've got this big, wonderful 24-70 f2.8 on the front of it, and it just, boop, it's so heavy. But the ergonomics of this camera is fantastic. It's got little ridges in all the right places. There's a ridge for my fingers here. It's a good ridge for the thumb. And they even squared off this little spot right here, which makes it a lot easier to have some sort of hold with the tips of your fingers on your left hand. And that's good. This is a great little canyon of buildings to be shooting in the broad daylight in, because you get some really dark shadows and really high highlights. And it's a great spot to test the dynamic range of your camera. I was just experimenting with different shutter speeds and aperture combinations. I used one aperture combination and shutter speed with a lower shutter speed just to get some blur in the water, a little motion. And another one I had the shutter speed boosted up to about 2,000th of a second just to get that water frozen, just to see what sort of different results I could get. The dynamic range is really totally usable, even though I was shooting directly into the sun. One thing that's really nice is that it's got a built-in HDR mode. And one thing that's even nicer than having a built-in HDR mode is having a built-in HDR mode that shuts itself off after you've taken one photo, so you can go back to shooting normally. Or if you're forgetful like me, you won't just leave it on and shoot a whole session in HDR. I've done that before. Let's see how many images we can stuff into the buffer of this camera. So I was simultaneously shooting RAW and JPEG, and it took 10 really quickly and then had to stop to write them. I've been shooting a lot of stills in full automatic mode with the flash set for fill light. And I have to say that it does a really good job. It gives just the right amount of light to fill out the shadows. I'm getting plenty of blue in the sky. The sky's not blown out, but yet I can still see people's faces because of the flash. Some nice tonal range, and I really appreciate that. So we're gonna test the quiet mode. Normal, quiet. I don't think the quiet mode, and this holds true for all Nikon DSLRs, the quiet mode is disappointing. That being said, the Nikon D600 is the quietest Nikon DSLR I've used, at least at the pro level. The D800 is a lot louder than this. The D4 is louder, the D3S is louder, on down the line. They're all really loud. If you want to buy a camera for its quietness, you're not going to shop for a Nikon. That being said, if you're a Nikon person who wants the quietest Nikon with pro features, the D600 is your camera. The autofocus doesn't seem to be improved over the D7100 at all. The one thing I don't like about the focus points is that they're all bunched up around the middle. If I was going to ask Nikon for anything, I'd say keep the number of focus points, but just spread them out around the viewfinder. It hunts a lot in live view mode, which is to be expected, but also a little disappointing. If you're shooting video, you're going to have to do it yourself. One thing that's a bummer about shooting movies in live view mode is that you can't adjust the aperture on the fly. You have to exit live view mode, readjust your aperture, go back into live view mode, and then start videoing again. I've got the D600 set to high ISO 1. And I gotta say, the images look really nice. You can definitely see the grain, but it's a totally usable picture. Let's try it out on the highest ISO setting. You can definitely see some bluing of the image. If you want to do any cropping, probably won't get very great results with the highest ISO setting. The viewfinder on the Nikon D600 is nice and bright and wide. I really appreciate that. It's got 0.7 magnification, which is the exact same magnification as the Nikon D800, its older brother. It's nice to see that Nikon has improved the flaps on the sides of their cameras. They're sealed and hinged, so they actually stay open. One thing I've noticed is that there tends to be a lag. If I want to review two photos that I've just taken, it shows me the first one instantly, and if I push to try and get to the next one, it thinks about it for a few seconds before it lets me do it. And that can be disconcerting because I'll jab at the dial a couple of times, thinking that maybe that'll get it to do it, and then it skips back as many times as I poked it. So I get lost in the shuffle. If you were thinking about buying a new camera and your choices were the Nikon D7100 or the Nikon D600, which one should you buy? The 7100 costs quite a bit less and is jam-packed with features. The 600 is also jam-packed with features, costs a bit more, and offers a full-frame sensor. In my opinion, your decision will come down to two things. How many DX lenses do you have, and how much money do you really want to spend? The D600 does an automatic DX crop, so you can use all DX lenses on this camera, and it'll sense them and automatically crop the sensor down to a DX size. This is definitely, for all intents and purposes, a pro quality camera at sort of a pro/advanced hobbyist level price. For the price point, I think that this camera offers more bang for the buck than any other camera I've ever put my hands on. That's saying a lot. I'm Nathaniel Johnston, and if you'd like to see my photography, you can check out my website, NJohnstonphotography.com. Thanks for watching this episode of Focus Camera TV with the Nikon D600 review. See you next time.